Just who I am.
Hi, everyone. How are you today? Today we're so glad that you joined us today for our webinar where we're going to talk about reusable packaging in the solar industry. I am Vanessa Benkert. I'm the Director of Marketing at PVpallet, and this is Philip Schwarz, CEO and co-founder of PVpallet.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. Really appreciate your time.
For our agenda today, we are going to talk a little bit about PVpallet and how we got started, and then we're going to move into kind of the background of reusable packaging and why it's important and what it can do for your company. And then Philip is going to take us in to demonstrate all of our different products that we offer in the reusable packaging realm that specifically benefit the solar industry. And then finally, we're going to take audience questions. Now, if you have questions throughout the presentation, then definitely use the chat, and we'll be monitoring that chat throughout. And we can do live question and answer while Philip's doing the demonstration as well.
All right, so who we are at PVpallet. We are on a mission to eliminate waste from the solar industry. And waste comes in a number of different forms. We're really focused on a few different waste streams that we're trying to eliminate. One is the wood pallet waste and shipping containers, cardboard waste that's so prevalent throughout the industry. Our industry is very in tune with using things one time because it's the cheap and easy way to do things, but that generates a ton of waste. On top of that, when you ship your cargo, your equipment in I'll call it cheap packaging, like cardboard and wood pallets, you're prone to damage. So we get a ton of waste streams as well from damaged equipment and solar modules. On top of that, there's the monetary waste. When you're using things one time, it's cheaper when you're on the front end, but life cycle wise, it adds up to a significant amount of cost that really isn't necessary in the industry. And then last but not least, there's the people waste associated with everything. And that comes in the form of inefficiencies in the field when you're doing installations, as well as safety concerns that are associated with the current standard form of single-use packaging in our industry. So we're really on a mission to eliminate that waste and drive the industry forward to be holistically sustainable and not just sustainable on the power front.
I'm getting some feedback that people can't hear us. So can you kind of mention in the chat if you're still having difficulty hearing us? You can't hear us. Okay. Oh, Tyler can hear us. Okay. All right. Well, then we're going to continue going forward. Thanks for letting us know that our audio is working.
I will say on that note too, Philip, it looks like you're having some problem. If you're still having issues, we are recording this, so we can send out the video afterwards as well.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Philip, for walking us through kind of the history of PVpallet and how we got started and our mission. So then we kind of wanted to take a minute to get some audience feedback. If you could put in the chat any challenges you've had with wood pallets or with traditional packaging, disposable packaging. Common answers that we hear are breakage to the goods being shipped or the waste and the disposal issues. And so any other comments that you have, issues that you've seen, and we'll kind of talk through some of those challenges. I'll give you guys a few minutes to put those answers in there. Awesome. Thank you guys so much for your comments. And like I said, the very most common thing that we hear, especially in solar, is the breakage issue of wood pallet, or the breakage issues that people see when shipping modules in transit. From people, we hear about a 2 to 7% breakage rate. And that breakage rate, we just want to make sure that we note, increases as those modules are handled more and more. So especially once they're shipped from the manufacturer and that manufacturer packaging is broken into and you're shipping partials or you're taking your leftovers and trying to store it, that's really when that breakage increases significantly. Then like kind of ties in with the breakage issues, but shipping partial loads is a huge pain and a big pain point for a lot of people. And there's also storage limitations. When you have leftover solar modules of various sizes, what do you do with that, with those leftovers, and how can you store them efficiently? And then there's the, in addition to the storing leftovers, there's limited stackability due to weight. So typically it's recommended that you only stack packaged modules from the manufacturer too high, and that can really kind of limit your space within a warehouse. Then there's safety concerns, how those things are packaged. If they're stacked vertically, when you cut into that packaging and those solar modules start to fall over, how can you manage and mitigate that risk? And then finally, there's the waste disposal. And waste disposal you see on from the packaging itself at the installation site, where you have to dispose of all of that or pay to get that packaging recycled. And then there's also, if you're breaking 2 to 7% of your modules, then what do you do with those broken modules? There's disposing those or paying to get those recycled. So these are some common issues that we see within the industry when using traditional packaging.
I always like to highlight that picture in the lower left that you guys can see there. That's a picture that we took. We drove past a job site and couldn't believe. I mean, there were hundreds, if not thousands, of pallets that looked just like that had been sitting out in the weather for who knows how long, but potentially months. And that wood pallet degrades, and it gets to the point where you can't even. It's no longer a pallet; it's just a pile of rubble. So you can imagine going out in the field, your field guys out there trying to pick up all that trash that's turned into rubble. It's incredibly inefficient. And on top of that, the modules, as you see there, they're already leaning over. So you cut that banding and take that shrink wrap off, and those things are prone to fall over and either break and or hurt somebody. So there's a huge issue there as well. That's a big one that's not always immediately obvious when you look at packaging, is thinking about the downstream implications of the subpar packaging.
Yeah, I actually had someone at a show tell me that they had thousands of modules that were on an installation site that had been sitting outside, and the packaging had rotted from underneath and they couldn't move them. And it was a big safety issue and just, it's a problem. So then we kind of wanted to talk a little bit about why reusable packaging. There are a lot of reasons that people are switching to reusable packaging. The main umbrella reason is sustainability. You have less waste overall because you have something that's being used over and over and over again. And then it's also reducing the damage of the goods being shipped. So because you're using it over and over, you're reducing that waste in both disposing of the damaged goods as well as disposing of the packaging. And then it uses less energy because you're only manufacturing something. You're not manufacturing something for every single time that item is packaged. You're be able to use that packaging over and over and over again. And then if there is damage to the product, or you are taking that disposed of packaging, you don't have to use the energy to recycle it every single time. And then we move into the kind of buzzword within solar right now which is circularity. Reusable packaging is truly a circular economy where it's used, reused, and then brought back to its original form, broken down, filtered back into a mold, made again. And so you get this really circular economy. And finally, there is a significant return on investment for businesses that switch to reusable packaging. It's a long-term cost reduction, and that cost reduction is not only in the fact that you're not buying packaging every single time. It's also due to breakage of goods, like we've talked about. And then finally, there's other costs that happen when you have damaged goods. You have to ship a new one out. You have labor costs. You have a lot of just additional costs that are built into having poor packaging. One thing that we like to cite is we did a case study with Green Tech Renewables, and they estimated that for each solar module that was broken, it was not costing them $250 or whatever the cost of the module itself was. It was actually costing them about $800 per module, because they started adding in all those additional costs that happened when the module was broken. And then that even doesn't account for the fact that if you have too many broken modules, then you have crews that are sitting around and unable to then complete the installation, and it can, you don't want people sitting around doing nothing.
Yeah, and I'll just add one more thing too on the ROI front. Obviously, with reusable packaging, the driver on the return on your investment and value proposition of the customer it lies in reuse. And the fact that the Inflation Reduction Act is driving so much more domestic manufacturing to the industry, there's literally never been a better time to start thinking about reusable packaging for our industry in particular. The fact that manufacturing is being done on the same landmass now over the course of the next year or so as the manufacturing heads this way, that equipment's being manufactured and put into packaging, and the same landmass that's being offloaded means that cycle time can be so much faster than it could, when we're talking about overseas manufacturing. So the timing for the industry is amazing.
And this is just kind of a graphic showing what a circular economy really is. A linear economy, is a take, make, waste economy, where you take whatever raw materials you're going to use, you make it into your item or packaging, and then you dispose of it. So circular economy instead takes the raw materials, manufactures it, distributes it. It's used, it's reused over and over and over again. And then at the end of its life cycle, it's recycled. So it's broken down into that raw material again, and then the cycle continues over and over. So that way you don't end up with the same amount of waste. And I just kind of wanted to show this. This right here is an example of what is actually fed into the machines. It's HDPE plastic, and it's broken down laundry detergent dispensers, all sorts of different HDPE type plastic.
Yeah, I always like telling the story when you look at this. It's kind of hard to see in the jar, but maybe I'll dump some out here. If you can look at, see if I can see that. There's dark gray or blackish pieces in there, but then there's some that are brightly colored in there. And the cool thing is that for the most part, those dark pieces are all plastic that's been recycled before. So it's being remolded, like Vanessa's point in the circular economy diagram. That plastic is all being remolded into new PV pallets. The colored plastic is in all likelihood being recycled for the first time. So it's just now starting on the front end of that circular life cycle, and it'll be remolded and remade into new reusable products over and over again.
And all of our products are made of already used plastic. So we're taking waste, we're making it into something useful, and then we're breaking it down again at the end of its usable life and making it into another PV pallet.
One more thing on that front too, that I want to say is we are also on that note working on a life cycle analysis, carbon footprint study, so that we can better quantify our carbon footprint reduction for our customers as well, which should be able to help play into our customers' ESG initiatives down the road too. So that's exciting.
Yep. So that's kind of our introduction to reusable packaging versus traditional packaging, why we are doing what we're doing within the industry, why we're trying to reduce that waste. And so with all that being said, we're going to get started on the demo portion of our webinar. And I'm just going to talk you through really quick. Philip's going to go get set up. We are going to talk, the items that we're going to talk about today is the PVpallet Series X and its key features, which is our signature product and the product that most people know us by. And then in addition to this PVpallet Series X, we're going to talk about our nesting totes. We have totes that will completely nest and fit into a PV pallet. So you can ship all sorts of different items on that, organize your different parts when you're trying to send things out to kit or send things out to installations. You can use it to store your tools. There's a lot of different options there. And then finally, we're going to talk about our bulk bins. They have a 48 by 45 base, and the most popular height is a 34-inch. And we'll kind of walk through all the different features with that. So without any more delay with that, I am going to turn this over to Philip. In a minute, he's ready. And as they're kind of getting set up and started there, if you have any specific questions you want to make sure that we cover in the demo, go ahead and put them in the chat and I will call them out to Philip as he goes along through the demo. And we can hopefully, if your questions are related to the specific product, we can address that then. Oh, give us a minute.
There we go.
Okay. Thank you for your patience as we determine this.
We good, Vanessa?
I can't hear you over here. Can everyone hear Philip? Nope, no one can hear you. I'm so sorry, everyone. No. Okay, we can swap around. Okay, we're gonna. Are you good? Okay, we're gonna just use my computer, so give me a second as I walk over to do that. I don't know. Okay, I'll just walk over there.
Just use that webcam. The computer then. Sorry about that, everybody. I promise we actually did test the AV
I'll just walk
before.
around like this, we're good.
Okay, before we did all this. So thanks for your patience. It's not really tilted this way. So like Vanessa said, we're going to walk you through the product line that we currently offer. So we're going to start off with showing you the PVpallet Series X, which is our flagship product. That was really what was the genesis of PVpallet as a company. Then we're going to walk you through our bulk containers, our collapsible bulk containers, and then lastly, we'll walk you through our tote system. So to start, here's the PVpallet Series X. Again, this is our flagship product that we had in development for several years, and it was the genesis of our company. So how we started as PVpallet is my co-founders had an installation business. They were doing small residential and small commercial installs in northern Missouri. At the end of every job, we were left with dumpsters full of waste that had to be thrown away. And again, those broken modules and the safety issues. So we knew there had to be a better way. And we were inspired by seed containers in the ag industry that were reusable HDPE bins that were used for shipping seed. And we got together, we said, why can't we do this in solar? So that was really how this all started. PVpallet Series X launched middle of last year. We brought product to market. We started selling in June of last year. So we've gone through our first 1,000 pallets and we've got more in production right now. So we can produce up to 250 of these a day, so we can match a pretty significant amount of demand. So these pallets, like Vanessa mentioned, they're made out of recycled HDPE plastic. It's all post-industrial. They can be used over and over again. At the end of their life, we can take the hardware components off, reuse those, and put the large plastic components into a grinder, grind them up and back into those plastic pallets or plastic pellets and make new pallets out of them. So I'm going to walk you through how the Series X functions, what some of the features of it are, and we'll go from there. So when you receive a PV pallet, it looks like this. It's collapsed in its knockdown form. What this is it's a base pallet right here. And then there's two walls that are collapsed on top of the base pallet. They're latched in. There's blue latches here. They keep them secure, so you can't pull the walls off unless you undo the latch. So this is 10.5 inches high when it's collapsed, and you can fit 130 of these on a dry van in their collapsed form. They're stackable, basically as high as you want to stack them in the collapsed format. There's no real limit. The limit is really your safety, your safety protocols and the roof line of your building. So when they're collapsed, you can stack them as high as you want. I'm going to take the walls off here, get a better look at their erected form. So like I said, you undo those latches, and then you just put it into its posts. There's 6 notches on each end, so they move in 2-inch increments. So you can bring these walls in and out to accommodate different size modules. So just to demonstrate that a bit, right now it's at its furthest out setting. I could bring it in 6 inches there. So again, there's 6 slots that you can put these in. I'm going to move it back out. Actually, we're going to demo installation of a module, so I'm going to put it. So once the walls are erect, we've got these cross braces that nest into the sidewalls. And what you do is you swing these around. They'll drop into place on this rod. And then you bring them around, and there's a tooth system here. So it's a male and a female. They nest into each other. And there's a slam latch here. So all you have to do is push them closed. Do that on both sides, and the wall's nice and secure. I'll show the other side here. Do the same thing. So now your walls are locked into place. You're good to go. And what does that do for you? The walls, again, when we brought this to market, we were experiencing a lot of damage. So we knew we couldn't just develop another flat pallet. We knew we had to add some additional value to our customers. So the purpose of these walls is twofold, actually threefold, really. One is it provides additional protection. So you're really not going to get any side impact. These cross braces protect it from front impact. And there's also, it's an inset a little bit, there's a rail here. So you're not going to be able to get your forklift right up to the edge of the module like you can on a wood pallet. So the walls provide additional protection. On top of that, as Vanessa mentioned, when you're shipping and stacking full pallets of modules on a wood pallet, you're really supposed to be limited to 2 high stacking because all the weight is on the cargo. With this PVpallet Series X system, all the weight when you stack is on the sidewalls themselves. There's notches here, so you can line up the upper pallet and any one of those increments that I mentioned and the adjustability, and you can stack them in a warehouse controlled environment up to 4 high, and on a truck you can stack them up to 2 high. If you want to flip the camera around here, this is a great example of the 4 high stack. So again, 4 high stacking in a warehouse setting. And this bottom one here shows exactly what I just mentioned, that when they're stacked 4 high, the wall is really what's doing the structural support. It's not the cargo. So as you can see here, there's a gap. There's no weight whatsoever on that cargo. So that's another way. It helps with warehouse storage, and then it also helps reduce that damage. We believe that a lot of damage also occurs in those 2 high stacks when all the weight's on the cargo. Last but not least, what the walls do for us is provides a load management system. So we've got these rails that run upper and lower along the width of the sidewalls. Do you want to zoom in or bring that in a little bit? So this rail system is what keeps the partial loads secured. If you have a full pallet, you don't have to use these, but if you're trying to ship a partial load vertically, just open these locks and flip them down, and you can locate these handles anywhere along this rail. So what you do is you can sandwich. There's handles on both sides, so you can sandwich your modules and keep them upright. A very good example of that is right here. We've got a partial load of 8 modules. These right now are being held in by that load management system. They're not going anywhere. They're not going to fall over on you. Makes it very easy for install, and again limits that damage. One other thing that's worth noting is that the bases are reinforced with 2x4 galvanized steel rods. So that's what gives you that structural stability. And they're also galvanized to prevent rusting out in the field. One other kind of fringe benefit from using those steel tubes is that we also see a lot of damage when people have forklifts. They put their forks in and come up at an angle. When you've got a flat stack of modules, those forklifts, the tines can come up from the bottom and break modules. So these 2x4 steel tubes also serve that purpose, to eliminate that puncture from the bottom and getting module breakage that way. That does bring up a good point also, that while the load management system is designed for vertical stack, you can flat stack in the PVpallet too. It's really up to your operations and what you want to do. Is there anything I missed on Series X?
I don't think so.
I will demonstrate real quick too how easy it is to load modules. So again, you put these handles where they need to be. I like to bring the upper one out just a little bit so it's a bit slanted when you first load it to keep them upright. So I'm moving this first, the lower one all the way in. I'm moving the upper one about 2 inches further out. These vertical ribs actually provide a nice visual guide to know where you're putting those handles. I'm going to put these 2 up that I put previously. Take my module. Clean up there. And then I just take these handles on the front side and again sandwich them. Line them up vertically. And we come back to these back handles and I just snug them up. So there you go. That's as simple as that. And that's how you do your partial loads with PVpallet.
Does anyone have any questions before we move on to the next item? Okay.
All right.
Let's move on.
Let's move on to the bulk container. So this is exciting for us. It's a new product line that we just picked up a few months ago. As we went into all these different warehouse and installs, and we're trying to sell Series X to our customers, we look around and we see it's not just module packaging, it's packaging across the board in our industry that's so poorly done. So we set out on a mission to find another reusable packaging product line that we can offer that helps to ship other parts and components in the industry. So to do that, we now have a line of bulk containers and totes, which we're going to walk you through now.
Before we get started with that, we do have a question. And the question is, modules are getting longer. Will you be accommodating the module sizes for the future?
Yes, we are. So we have a new product line in development right now that will accommodate the M10 cell size. And then in the meantime, we also, depending on the volume demand from our customers, we also have an option where we could customize the Series X and make some modifications to it to make it longer and or the walls taller to accommodate those bigger module sizes. So that is definitely an option right now. Series X was really designed for the M6 cell, but there's ways to make it work for M10, for customer needs. All right, so here's what we call a bulk container. In a picture, it doesn't look too much different than a PVpallet, but there are some differences to it. So the first thing you'll notice is this is more of a standard pallet size. This is a 45-inch by 48-inch container. Again, this is also collapsible. So when it comes to you, it's going to come in this knockdown format, and it's very easy to use, much like a PVpallet Series X. So it comes like this. To open it up, you just pull on the sidewalls. And then just pull the walls up. It's very similar. They've got locking latches. It's really as simple as that. These green latches here knock the whole wall down. The blue latches here provide an access point so you can still keep your container upright, but still be able to easily access the contents without, taking all the walls down. So again, the goal here was to have a solution to help people ship other parts and components, wire coils, junction boxes, inverters, whatever it may be. If you don't need the full-blown PVpallet Series X, we've also got a container to ship other things.
And one thing that people have talked about using that a lot, specific use cases when you're trying to fully cube out a flatbed truck, and you prevents anything from rolling around on the flatbed.
Yep. The other thing with bulk containers is that we have a lid for these as well. An option, they don't have to buy the lids, and we've got a solution as well to modify the lids to add locking latches onto them. So you can keep your contents secure. These locking latches. So, again, we've got one customer right now that was very interested in these for shipping wire coils on their jobs. And it's only going to grow from there in terms of the use cases. So pretty straightforward, but it's an exciting product for us to offer.
And these are also stackable, even with the lid on. They can stack, I think 4 high, hold about 2,000 pounds.
Yeah. And really the goal when you're looking at these different types of bins and containers, you're trying to maximize your truck usage, right? So they've been designed with the dimensions so that we can optimize the contents of a truck as much as possible. And you can also stack these with the lid on too as well. So any questions on the bulk containers? All right. We'll move on to the totes. Another very exciting thing for us. So the tote system really came, the genesis of this was the fact that we talked to a lot of people that ship PVpallet Series X, and they're shipping it out to small job sites, residential jobs, small commercial, whatever it may be. They've got a partial load of pallets or of modules, and they say, well, we wish there was a way that we could use that extra space so we could ship other parts and components. Well, that's exactly what these totes do for us. So again, they're pretty straightforward. It's nothing amazing in terms of functionality. They don't collapse or anything like that. But what they do is allow you to nicely cube out a PVpallet Series X with all these bins. So, just as an example, you can ship your small parts and components for your installs in here. You can ship tools for your job, whatever it may be. Microinverters, again, junction boxes, smaller parts and components fit perfectly in these. And as you can see here, this is one example of how we can cube out a PVpallet with these. So we've got, what is this? We've got 12 containers in here. This one's a 24-inch by 15-inch wide by 11-inch tall. And this is a 48-inch by 15 by 11-inch tall. So a lot of options there for how you can ship other parts and components. And this would be an example of fully cubing out a Series X with these containers. Over here is an example of what I just mentioned when you're shipping partial loads. You've got partial load modules here, you've got this extra space. Well, you can add these additional totes onto this same pallet and you can do job kitting that way. So, as a distributor, if you know you've got a small job, you can basically put your whole job in a box and send it out. So very useful from a kitting and installation convenience standpoint.
I also wanted to note that when you have this fully cubed out option over here, 2 of the smaller ones will fit perfectly on top of one of the long ones. So you can kind of mix and match those however it makes the most sense.
Just to demonstrate that, that's exactly what Vanessa was saying. Those two 24-inch ones fit exactly on top of a 48-inch.
And sorry for the bad camera work. I'm using my computer and it's a little challenging to try to see how to what you guys are seeing. Okay, do we want to go back and let's go ahead and I'm going to walk back over to where we were originally and we'll talk through any questions that we have and we'll go from there.
All right, give us one moment. We'll get resituated at the table. Thank you.
Okay, we're back. Philip's going to be here, back over here in just a minute. What questions do you all have that based upon what we covered today, based on products, reusable packaging in general? Go ahead and just put your questions in the chat and then we'll discuss them.
Yeah, I'm going through some of the comments here right now, just looking at some things. So Bill mentioned the fact that oftentimes facilities don't want to accept the cheap chemically treated pallets. That's a great point. We have a close relationship with a pallet reclaim company that's based down in Georgia. And just anecdotally, he's called us and said that there's some solar sites down there. One in particular had 30,000 wood pallets that they were trying to get rid of, and no one wanted them, including him. He said, "I don't want those pallets. They're low quality. They're made out of particle board. I can't reuse them. I can't repurpose them." So that is a big problem. And Bill, I appreciate you pointing that out.
We have an additional question here where it says, where in the project life cycle does PVpallet start? And can you work with distributors to repallet once the shipments arrive?
Sure. Yeah. So right now, in the PVpallet, in terms of the solar life cycle, where we start. So the people that we really see the most buying them today are distributors, installers, and decommissioning companies. So it depends. I'm not sure where in the supply chain or life cycle chain you are specifically, but right now that's really where we're seeing them be sold direct. Some of our distribution customers have been implementing premium delivery service options where they're buying the pallets and then they are basically charging a slight premium for modules to be delivered on a PVpallet because there's such downstream savings and efficiencies for the installers. So what we're finding is that the installation crews are willing to pay a little bit more to get modules on PVpallets because they see the benefits from them. Installers are using them just because it makes their lives easier on the installation business. Decommissioning companies are liking them because they are adjustable. So, maybe they're decommissioning one size module job today and tomorrow it's a totally different size module. So the fact that they can use those same pallets for multiple size modules is a huge win for decommissioning companies. And then warehouse management is another key benefit that people are seeing right out the gate. So the fact that you can stack 4 high, your warehouses can be more organized. You're eliminating all the wood pallet waste that's often sitting in the corner of a warehouse or out back on a loading dock. That's a win for a lot of people too. Ultimately, what we're working on is getting up the supply chain in with more on the manufacturing side. So, the holy grail for us is modules are coming out of the manufacturing facility on a PV pallet. That's obviously, it's a tall ask. We're working our way upstream and we're making a lot of progress there. So stay tuned. I think you're going to probably hear some news on that front later this year, but for now, it's really the direct sales to those distributors, installers, and decommissioning folks.
We have one question here, which is, do you have any demonstrations of how the repalletizing what the repalletizing process is? Sorry. They were curious if their crews could repalletize onto a PV pallet, or if it would be better to happen at the distributor standpoint.
Honestly, it could work either way. I can't speak to, your specific operations. What we have seen is that some folks are doing it in the distribution center just manually. Some folks are doing it out in the field. And one thing in particular is that makes life really easy if you're really doing a lot of this repalletization is there's these things called carton clamps that attach to forklifts. And you can pick up a cube of modules at a time and very quickly move them from a wood pallet onto a PV pallet. So that's a great option if we're talking, higher volumes. That's something we'd be happy to talk to you about specifically offline if you guys want to dig into that in more detail.
And a very logical point in the process to repalletize is often whenever you're going to break into your mod, like the manufacturer issued modules, anytime you're going to break a full pallet is a good time to then put them onto a PV pallet for easier management until we reach the point that they're coming directly from the manufacturer.
Yep. Another, anecdotally, it's very interesting to see. Again, we brought this to market June of last year. So the way we are finding people are using PV pallets has also been very interesting. But on the utility scale front, one application we've seen, which is a very interesting idea, is there's a company that's interested in buying basically one PV pallet per row. Because they do their install at the end of that row. It's not very often you end up with a perfect number of modules that matches up with that row you're working on. So they end up with a partial pallet load at the end of every row, and then they can load those onto a PV pallet and take them to another part of the job site.
And another thing that we've seen is where people use it. Philip was talking about warehouse management. It's when you have a lot of different size leftovers and you need a way to store those, even if you have like a large installation and you need to keep those on hand in case any of your current array break, then you can easily store various size modules with the PVpallet Series X. So that's another way that it works within the warehouse management side of things.
Scrolling through the questions here.
Yep.
I think that covers all the questions. You guys obviously found us on LinkedIn, I think in most cases, and registered that way. So if there's anything that comes up, after the fact, you're sitting at home stewing on this and have something else that comes up, feel free to reach out via LinkedIn or shoot us an email. Vanessa B at PVpallet.com or Philip S at PVpallet.com, and we're happy to answer any questions you guys have down the road. We're also going to be at InterSolar here in a few weeks in Long Beach, so we'll have our pallets on the floor in our booth there, and as well as the bulk containers and totes, so you guys can see these in person and get a feel for what they really look and get a hands-on experience with them.
We're in booth number 1955 if you're there and want to look for us. And we will also be taking this recording and with all of our technical difficulties and sending it out in case you want to sift through it. And yeah, definitely reach out if you have any additional questions. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, everybody. Really appreciate it.